Okay, uh, take two. Uh, this is a lecture regarding section 3.8 and also review for the test. This is for Monday, September 28 and Tuesday, September 29. Remember that chapter quizzes are due on Thursday at 2 o'clock for all sections. That gives you plenty of time to get them done, I think. If you don't do them by then, I will not give you any further credit. I will eventually publish them back, but no further credit will be given. But they will be unpublished for a while until I get a chance to, gather up all the points. I think that's only fair to do that. Some of you have already finished them, and others haven't, and that gives you at least some idea for what could be on the test. But today, let's get through 3.8, the last of the sections that they will be covering. Quantitative variables were the main focus of this chapter, but we do have categorical variables that do show up sometimes. And for example, they have these different types of categories for count of peoples in this survey: African American, white, Asian, Latino, other. They have not put this in any kind of real order. But let's see what the comment is. They say, make some observations about the shape, center, spread, weirdness. Well, yeah, this is just kind of weird because it isn't comparable to what we've done already. We don't really have a shape here. It just isn't there. So it's categories. Sometimes they put them in alphabetical order, but often they'll put them in the order with the highest numbers first. And here, Asian would have led off, and white would have been second, Latino would have been third, African American would have been fourth. And it's very traditional to put other or miscellaneous at the end, no matter what its count may be. But if you put it in order, that's also known as a Pareto chart. They've decided not to call it that here. In fact, they just put it in a random order, which I find to be not very tasteful. But you cannot say anything about a center or shape. It's like, what state were you born in? What country were you born in? How do you put that in any kind of order, except perhaps alphabetical or perhaps numerical from highest to lowest? It's a very typical way to go. So this is just weird compared to the other distribution. Yeah, it's not bell-shaped. That would be absurd to do that. So I don't think you would have a question like that. But if you did, for categorical data, there's no such thing as bell-shaped. You could get towards uniform, however. It's possible to have several competitive quantities, categories, I should say, categories that are about the same. So if you find ways of getting to work under normal non-COVID times, you may find that it's split up pretty equally amongst 4 or 5 choices. It's possible. Probably not, but it's possible. It could happen. So anyway, let me see if I can shrink this down just a little bit. It's so hard to change the shape of this. Well, anyway, I guess we're just clipping off part of the writing here. That's the disadvantage of stretching it out. Okay, it won't seem to, okay, I can't seem to get it back, so I'll just have to go back and forth. Although we are tempted to call this roughly normal, it is certainly not. We've used histograms to discover the distribution of a variable, and these look like histograms. They're really more like bar charts, bar graphs. Bar graphs are just different. They look like histograms, but they have categories on the x-axis. These are categories for sure. And we have the fact that we have, the categories are certainly in order as far as, that is, the count is, the order, I take that back. Not in order, but the count is certainly appropriate, but the order really is up to you. And as I say, in order from high to low, or perhaps alphabetical is the most popular one. This was sort of random. So these are called bar graphs, and when they're categorical, some differences exist. Most of the time they put a space in between them. So there's a space, and there are only 2 categories here: the gender or sex, female, male. And these are the type of graphs that are very popular in magazines or the USA Today. I've seen that on vacations. The newspaper, they're famous for having all kinds of charts. That's one of the best things about that paper, is they have a lot of them. Sometimes they're not that appropriate. They just seem to be stretching to make some sort of weird point. But often it's very interesting, and a picture is worth 1,000 words, as they say. So anyway, they've taken a look at sex and race ethnic from the data frame fingers, and then they just decided to look at the gender only. They made a bar graph, and they call it GF underscore bar. Bar is not meant to be anything but categorical. Yeah, we'll have counts. This is well over 100. Hard to say exactly how much, 110 maybe for the females, and maybe around 40 or 50 for the males. More than a 2-to-1 ratio, which you can see at a glance. So we have some other requests here. Use the window below to create a bar graph of race ethnic again. And so we can do that. And so what they're going to do here is look at the hint. And it says modify the code that they just had with the variable sex data equals fingers to well, let's see. We've got data equals fingers. It's the fingers data set. And I'm being distracted by phone messages here. I need to push my phone away. Sorry. Okay, so what do they want us to do? What did we do before? We had GF bar with sex. This is just basically the same thing, except we're going to take it from race ethnic. So I think what I'll do is I'll just sort of copy this command. Your options will be different than mine, I'm sure, but I'll go ahead and put that in here. And we can copy that and paste it. So here we go. Oops, wrong one. Sorry. Let's delete that. I'm not too organized today. So let's try it again, and I'll do that. And sorry to waste your time. Okay, got that. And slide it back and copy it like I should have. And I've got to click it first. There we go. Okay, now it's in there. But we need to change the, sometimes it's just easier just to type it in manually. And let me scoot that over there. We have the data not from fingers, but from this new one, or this other one called race ethnic. Of course, watch the capital letters and the spelling. So I'm just going to hit run, see what happens. And they didn't like that. Data from race ethnic. Okay. Oh yeah, well that's because I made a mistake. I didn't want to get the gender, I wanted to get the race. Or they wanted to get the race. I don't much care. But we do have data, and it's going to be from the same data set, data frame as they call it, data fingers. So this should work. Let me go ahead and run that now. And here we go. Now this is a little bit more complex. It's also not in any particular order, which I don't really find enjoyable. But let's take a look at a better picture. And they led off with white, then African American, then Asian, Latino, and other. As I say, it just looks better, I think, to have it more organized. Start off with the top one, then the second one, and then the third one, Latino, fourth one, African American, and other or miscellaneous should always be put in the back, no matter what its quantity is. If it's too large, then maybe you should divide it up further into visible quantities, or categories, I should say, categories. Because if I've seen bar graphs that had other that was just dominating the action. It was like it took up the lion's share, and that meant it wasn't divided up widely enough. You need to use that, because there are plenty of other races they could have used, but they made an executive decision to go to other after they picked the top 4. Okay, well there's plenty of others, as I'm sure you know, so that was a bit limited, but that's just what they gave us to work with. The count is still there. This is not any kind of relative count. It's just regular counts. And you can change the width of these bars by adding the argument width and setting it to some number, but that's not apparently that interesting to me, but you could experiment with that if you want. Compare and contrast bar graphs and histograms. Well, histograms are from numerical, countable data, quantitative data. Bar graphs, well, part of the reason they put the spaces in is because sometimes in magazines or other platforms that explain things by using pictures, such as political summaries or whatever. Pie charts can be used. I don't think we're going to be talking about pie charts. That's a very popular one. But bar graphs need the space to have extra room for the explanatory variable, whatever it may be. Sometimes they're very long-winded, and abbreviations may fall flat on their face because people don't know what you're talking about. So that's another reason they have the spaces in there, and it also kind of differentiates between categories and numerical data. So that's just another way to go. And bar charts are considered a little less formal, but they are very popular though. And often, instead of count, a percentage could be used, or of course a proportion could be used, but that's not being done right at the moment. And yes, of course, we have color and fill anytime you like. I have not been emphasizing that. I figure we have plenty to do with that, the fun part. But yes, please enjoy the many hundred colors they have. I could shrink that down just a little bit if I get the right angle. The trick is to get it just large enough to be visible so I can still see the words. Okay, so add arguments of color and fill to this. So we can, after the stuff here, we can put in for these bar graphs various colors. So I guess I'll do that, color. And remember, color is what goes on the outside. So you could say, oh, I don't know, red. I'm not too imaginative. They've got all these many other colors. And fill is what goes inside. That's the much more dominant one. So I'll say, let's see, fill equals, oh, I don't know, how about green? And of course, that has to be in quotes or it won't understand what you're saying. They do want that to be quoted. So let me see if make sure I put a double quote so it matches in case that matters. Let's just go ahead and run it. By the way, the hint was just to specify both the color for both graphs, so I guess I have to say that for both. What happens if I just say it for one? Let's see what happens. Okay, let's see. They didn't give me the colors I wanted. Also have to push that down and go for previous plot. Okay, here's the color one. Yeah, so the one I put the color in has the red framing. That's the color, ironically. What they call that borderline. That's what I would have called it. And green is the fill. I think of that as color, but you just have to not learn to think for yourself. You have to learn to think like an R programmer, which I know is not the easiest thing in the world, but that's part of this class. And of course, the next plot, which I forgot to put colors on, just gives you the standard gray or whatever it may be. So that's how that goes, and we just saw that one. In fact, we've seen both of them. We just experiment with colors. I guess while we have a moment here, let me just put in some other colors here. Color equals, quote, I don't know, yellow. And that's going to be not very visible. And let's go here and then type in fill equals, quote, how about, I don't know, blue. And let's try to run it now. So run it and it'll go for another pair. So you can see that one, and the yellow was completely hidden by the blue. That's the problem with the color. Color, sometimes I just wouldn't even put that in because you can't even see it half the time. And here's the other one that we already did. So let's move on. Shape, center, and spread. The distributions of categorical variables is just as important as visualizing the distributions of the numerical quantitative variables, but they need to be adjusted a little bit. We still are interested in things like spread. Center, though, doesn't make a lot of sense. But the shape could make sense if you see one or two of them that dominate the action and all the others are way below. I've seen data sets in recent classes that had, like, the top two causes of death, for example, were very far in front of the third, fourth, and fifth place items. And you can alter the shape. So yeah, I pay attention to it. It's nice and convenient to lead off with the largest ones, but that doesn't seem to be very much part of this class. Center, how do you get the center? I guess that would be where the most popular distribution is, the one that I would lead off with, the one on the far left side, the one that has the most values in it. And that's where the most observations are, would be called the mode of the distribution, another use for the word mode. And spread says how well they're distributed. And that still makes some sense, although the ordering is kind of up to you in this class. Do they dominate in one or two categories, or are they spread out evenly, almost like a uniform distribution? So that part is actually interesting to us. But the center doesn't make a lot of sense, except for the most popular modal type class. Frequency tables, though, we can summarize these with the tally command, and we can do that again. And let's see, this creates a frequency table of sex. Do not change this code, and the hint will say, just use it and change sex to race, ethnic. So that's what they said. We will go ahead and put that in, race, ethnic, and I will go ahead and run that now. And they did not like that. So from the data frame fingers, okay, I didn't delete sex. Of course, you got to delete the thing first. So let's go ahead and hit delete. Now I'll go ahead and run that. Making mistakes today. So here is the tally, and by the race or ethnicity, and it does kind of wrap around. We did actually have sex, so actually I should not have erased that one. So let's go ahead and put that in as well. I'm going to just copy this, and it says to tally, so I'm going to Command C and then Command V for my MacBook Pro, and then change this back to where it was. I should not have erased that. They wanted actually both of them, which I'd forgotten. So now I'm going to run it, and it'll give you both. It does give me the race ethnic, just like I saw before, but then it has sex too, and it tells you that we had 112 females and 45 males, more than a 2-to-1 ratio, about 2.5-to-1 ratio. And yeah, they have the same thing as we do, except they did the gender first. That doesn't make any difference really. Notice a lot of the functions, histogram, bar, tally, use the tilde, and histograms and bar graphs. What goes after the tilde gets placed on the x-axis. Is this also true in tally? Well, perhaps. This does not concern me very much, but it looks like they've shown an example down here. And yeah, the gender, yeah, so I'd have to say yes, just based on the example they've given us down here. That's something I haven't paid very much attention to. I apologize for that. Can't wait to get to the math part of this class. I've said that many times. Sometimes you wait. You may also want the total across all levels of the variable. In other words, a grand total. Seems like they should have given us this naturally, but no, you have to type in a special command for that, and that's going to be margins equals capital true, like a Boolean type of a deal where it's just true or false. So yeah, when it's true, they're going to total it for you. So margins is how they do it. Not what I would have done, but hey, they think differently perhaps. So that's what they've done. They didn't ask you to run it. They just showed you what happened. Along with the gender situation, they gave us the total of all the people there. And more often than not, maybe more useful to look at the relative frequencies. Certainly it is. Yeah, in most cases it is better to look at tallies, but I would say 3 or 4 decimals is plenty. I think the 7 is absurd. There is a way of changing that. I do not recall what that is, and that's just not considered very important right now. So if you know what that is or can look it up or something, be my guest. But then don't round it too far down. I say 3 is a bare minimum to keep, but 7 does seem to be a lot. I kind of notice the decimals. They don't seem to notice so much. Try using or including both format and margins as an argument for a tally of race ethnic. So let's see if we can do that. What do you predict the total proportion will be? Well, the total proportion has to be 100% or 1. Well, that's 1, so that's got to be a total. Occasionally there's round off error that makes it extremely close to 1, but that's just not a big deal. Here's the hint. Don't forget to use quotations around proportion. In your format, or your code should also include format equals proportion. So what I'm going to have to do here is to do something with tallying, and I'm going to keep all of this. We're going to keep the race ethnic, keep the data set, and go to, just as they said, margin equals true, all caps, so matches the Boolean objects, and then format equals proportion, just like they said. So let me just go ahead and copy this. I believe it'll copy. So if I slide that in there, and Command C and Command V, there we go, and there it is. So now I'm going to go ahead and run that, see what happens. So we had, by race ethnic, all the different races, about 32% for whites, 7% for African Americans, etc. And yes, it added up to 1 with 8 decimal places. So many decimals, and that does exactly match what they came up with. So that's certainly a good thing. Do you think we could also use tally for quantitative variables like thumb? Let's try it here. Write code for creating a frequency table for thumb. So let's see. What we could do is to just, well, let's see. I think I better copy this whole thing and start with that. So Command C, paste it down here as I get down into the second line and paste. Okay, so what they asked us for was thumb. Instead of race ethnic, we would need to get the thumb, and that's from the fingers data set, so we don't have to change the data set, fortunately. And so let's see what happens. I can take a look at the hint, by the way. Yeah, same code as used above, but now we're going to tally thumb after the tilde. So it follows after the tilde. Goes on the x-axis. So this one's a little bit longer because, in fact, not very practical. Because what they've done is they've listed all the different thumb lengths. And here's a 39 millimeter thumb lake, a 40 millimeter thumb lake, and it's hard to read because it kind of got shifted the wrong way. The 40 goes there, 44 goes there, so it looks like 1 goes to 0.006. That's 1 over 157, by the way, and this would be 2 of them, so the count mark would have been better. So this isn't very practical at all. And then you've got these decimals in an inconsistent way. Here's 2 decimals, here's a single decimal. Many of them are just whole numbers. They should have rounded them to the same level. And then the proportion, if needed at all, I would have just rounded this to 3 or 4 decimal places. Of course, the total, as we take a look at it, is 1, but it's just not very helpful. You could do it, but who would want to do this? What did you notice about the tallies? Well, yeah, there's just too many categories here, too many to be practical. They have bins for this kind of thing, or they group them by 5s or something like that. So this, it's not impossible to do. It just doesn't seem to have any use, in my opinion. But the total is still 1, and we still have a range of values, and there we go. So distributions of categorical variables are best explored with frequency tables and bar graphs, and graphs distributions of quantitative variables, which is what we've been talking about, are better off with histograms and box plots. For both kinds of variables, one might choose to use raw frequencies or relative frequencies, which most of the time is better. Density, proportion, even percentage. They don't talk about percentage, depending on the purpose. And it's important to have a comprehensive toolbox for examining all kinds of variables. Of course, keep an eye on the cheat sheet, which is available on the test. They're giving us more information about what's allowable on the test, but the last I heard was handwritten notes and the cheat sheet are available for sure. Scrolling through all the things in R is not only not allowed, it would be very unproductive. It takes way too long, and I'm afraid in the long run it will hurt you more than help you. So you really should have some sort of organized notes, perhaps by section. 2.6 is not covered, by the way, and certainly the chapter quizzes are kind of redundant, but that's your cheat sheet. So let's go back to where we were. That's my announcement that I've already given you, so be sure you adhere to the deadline. Let's get back to the topic, so I'll go back to the modules, and let's see what we need to do now. I thought I'd take a look at some of the quizzes. I'm not going to look at the first chapter quiz. That's almost like old history. Plus, it doesn't seem to scroll correctly. It seems to zoom in on just a tiny little 1-inch window for me. And I don't know why. They said they gave me a way to fix it, but it didn't work. So let me just go ahead to chapter 2, and let me see the highlights. I also have on my other laptop the tentative list of questions, which they have not chosen yet, and I can kind of comment on some of them. I'm not going to show you those, but I will make some comments. So here we have lots of these questions that hopefully by now you've almost finished. You should have finished chapter 2 by now, and if you're just finishing chapter 3, that's understandable. But you should have done chapter 1 to 2 by now. If you're just now starting that, you are way behind, I would have to think. And not all of these are going to be testable questions. In fact, some of them that require these types of multiple choices, I don't see it how they could be really testable that well, but they have decided to ask questions like this, and they are general good knowledge questions, like what's true about data. Yeah, all of the above. So I'll just give you a few of these. I'm not going to give you all of them. Measurement error, which ones could be true? Well, I did notice as of a couple days ago, the ones that are missed the most. And number 2 is one of those that was not heavily obtained. And I almost hate to, people have already submitted their quiz and gotten it wrong. I don't want to do too much of this because of that. And I'm sensitive to that. But what could be true if there's measurement error? Well, you could have biased or unbiased. It could be either way, and they did talk about that. So, yeah, anyway, some of these others, here's a data set. Yeah, you could expect to see smaller data sets perhaps and some graphs on the test. So here's a particular data set, and they ask us which command would work. There'll be some are commands. I wouldn't say a lot of them, but there are some. It's hard to say what proportion. It depends on what they pick. Maybe a third or maybe a little less than a third. But you should have the cheat sheet or some notes handy so you can kind of pick it out. There is a good number of multiple choice questions. Might even be a true-false question in there somewhere. But there'll be others where you actually have to work stuff out. I would just suggest typing in the answer, maybe showing a step or two. Certainly doesn't hurt your cause to do that. I know I'm always a big fan of showing their work. Anyway, some of these others, I'm just kind of taking a quick look. You've already probably done a lot of these. Where's another one that was heavily missed? Looking at number 14, let's skip ahead to number 14. That's one that's been heavily missed. And if you want to quickly see the name of the lake with the lowest average mercury level, what R command might you run? Well, a range seems to be pretty good, and it also does list the average mercury as well. So we've got the title of the data every single time, and a range here in A doesn't list that, but C does. So there you go. Like to see the first 10 rows, and yeah, you can try various things like yeah, if you just run head Florida Lakes, yeah, head automatically gives you 6. So if you want 10, you better say so. You have to say it. So yeah, and if you got a mistake, that's because you didn't tell them to put 10 in there. Let's take a look at a couple more, and I'll zoom over to chapter 3, and then I'll start to look over at the tentative list of questions, which I know everybody would love to see. I'd love to see it too. I want to see which ones they pick. I want to see if they pick my questions. I hope they did. Mine are pretty straightforward, I think. They're not theoretical, they're just computational, and anybody with a calculator and some kind of memory for various things in chapter 3 should have no trouble doing them at all. But that's a little later. Let's take a look at the last problem. Well, of course, the fill in the blanks, those are just subjective, and I will kind of grade those by hand. If I see something worth giving you points for, I'll give you the point. If I don't, I won't. And there's a possibility I'd give you half credit if you're right on the cusp there. But this number 18, let's see. If you wanted to generalize to all lakes in Florida, but only included lakes within 50 kilometers radius, that's a mistake, of the research center in your area, what should concern you? Well, what I see here is that if you only take the close lakes, that's like a convenience sample. Well, it is convenient, but convenience is not necessarily a good thing unless you're pretty lucky. It's not random. It also may not represent the population you want to know about. Oops. So that's not a good thing. So let's, as I get to squeeze this down, I'll go over to another module. Let's take a look at chapter 3 and give you starting point on that one. I'll just do the first one here. It seems like one of them is R intense and the other one is not. You will not be programming anything in R, but they might ask you what's correct or what's not correct. You will not be able to use R as a program, but they may ask you what would you do, and you can either type in a free response or sometimes they'll give you a multiple choice scenario. So here's U.S. states and average IQ of a U.S. state. California, ooh, that's surprisingly low for California. And Colorado, that's a smart state, above 100. The lowest one I see right now is California. That's not good news. And these are the presidential candidates that they voted for in the 2008 election. And population in millions, of course, and well, et cetera, et cetera. They explain what that is. So let's take a look at some things here. What are the variables would be appropriate for a histogram? Well, I'd say that it's hard to say no to any of these. A histogram, however, would have numerical values for college. College is percentage with college degrees. By the way, California had a 31%, but Colorado had a 38%, so that's good for them. Those are numerical data, and IQ, that's of course numerical data. Population, of course, but President 2008, that's a kind of a binary choice for the top two candidates, the only ones that got electoral votes. So that would be thrown out. So it says check all that apply. Those are the ones you have to be careful of because you can get only partial credit on those. Let's see about some that were missed heavily. The ones that have taken this one as of a couple days ago were doing pretty well on it, so I'm happy to see that. And these just give you some items to think about. And let's zoom ahead to one that I know is a trouble. That was number 12. So let's go ahead and take a look at 12. In our U.S. states data frame, the variable physical activity was obtained by surveying a random sample of residents in each state and asking them if they'd competed in a physical activity in the last month. And here we have those top 6 for the header command, and 77% for California, 79 in Alaska, 81 Colorado, that kind of thing. But 12 is asking us, interpret the 70.3 in the table below. So some people have had trouble with that. And it says an average of 70 times per year. Nope, it said something about last month. There aren't that many days in a month. And 70% of the surveyed residents said they completed it. Well, that's exactly what they said. How could it not be B? But won a physical competition? Didn't say that, did it? Competed in a physical activity? Well, this one we don't really know. Do we have cameras on the people 24 hours a day? Not yet. I hope never. But this is the ones they said they did. So some people may be, I don't know, very optimistic in their viewpoint, or rose-colored glasses, that kind of thing. So just because they said they did didn't mean they did. So you may discount this by X number of percent, and that could be how that could go. And this was a, yeah, so physical activity. It doesn't say it's percent, but I imagine it is percent. Random sample. Yeah, they should have used the word percent. So that's the idea. They actually finally used percent in B, C, and D. So I think I already cleared that one up. The word said is very important. So they have several others. And remember, if you have these to fill in the blank, just kind of put something in that seems to make sense to you, and I'll take a look at it, see if it kind of hits what we were looking for. So we have various other problems. Let's see, this is R code, which I don't always have on the tip of my tongue. I'm looking at the cheat sheet all the time. But favorite stats, yeah, the 5-number summary has the favorite stats in there. So yeah, that's got to be the only one that really does it. Sort, histogram, make fun. I don't know what all those are, but Fave Stats has that one. So that was an easy one. And in fact, most people are getting a lot of these others correct. It's starting to run a little long on time. So let me take a look as I get up to here and turn my other laptop back on. It keeps on wanting to go off. They do have, as I said, to kind of summarize, some R questions. So go ahead and you know, have the cheat sheet handy. Some notes would be good. And let's see if I can scroll this. And let's see. My laptop is kind of broken, so it doesn't work as well as it should. And so, okay. Now I'm having trouble scrolling. I knew that would happen. Okay, so they have a table. Here's one with a table that asks us to choose between categorical and quantitative variables. I think mostly those are obvious, but it'll give you a way to do it. There's one that I know will be deleted because we haven't covered that command yet. That doesn't help you. They talk about the rflip command, so that's a good one to look for just in case. Now, not all of these will make it onto the exam, but we were talking about some of them. I was asked to proofread the first part of the test, Chapter 1, beginning of Chapter 2, and I'm not sure which ones they're actually going to pick, but we put our deals in. There's one about a vector with the arrange and sort command and the tally command, so you want to definitely take a look at those. And then we have an output there. Let's see, getting into Chapter 2 now. No, I'm not doing a very good job. I wish I could kind of show you these. If I knew which ones they had not picked, I would show you those, but they didn't actually give us that option. There's a multiple choice question about the factor command, so you can remember the factor command. And then we have a multiple choice question about random samples, and so we want to make sure you kind of understand what that is. The end of Chapter 2, there's one from Dustin. And I'm looking at the short answer. And here's a picture of a histogram. It asks you about skew versus being symmetric, or, bell curve type of thing. There's another one, same type of question. And there's a resample function. So that's, gets into the difference between with and without replacement. So you should take a look at that one. Here's another one about skewness versus being uniform. And there's one that I've done, same type of theme. So it looks like uniform, bell curves, which is unimodal and symmetric, versus skewness, and the different kinds of skewness. Remember what we said about skewness. You need to take a look at the differences there. And calculating outliers, that's something you should be able to do. Here's one about the tally command. Here's one about, well, that looks like the end of the list here so far. And they want you to find out what the error is, and they give you multiple choice. So many of these are multiple choice questions. So that should be good news for many people, and you all know about multiple choices. Don't ever leave them blank. If you can't get it for sure, choose your top two and then flip a coin or pick one. And yes, there are lots of different versions out there. So collaboration would be futile. In fact, highly discouraged because it is cheating. You could be kicked out of the university for that. And yes, your Zoom camera must be on. If I can't see you, I'm assuming you're just not very interested in taking the test. So no light sources directly behind you. So if you're sitting right by a window and the sun's shining through, not a good idea. I would move to another part of the room if at all possible, or at least close your curtain. I can accept a certain amount of silhouette, but at some point I just have to pull the plug on you. Check your chat box. If you're not checking your chat box, you could be offline at any time because I will not accept that, and I will start calling people out. Usually there aren't very many, 4 or 5 in a typical class, and I'll just kindly remind you, please, either turn your camera on or point it so I can see you. And if I get to a second request, there may not be a third request. So please, I hate to be heavy-handed about it, but some students just don't listen to me. And I need to be listened to. So if you see exclamation points in all caps, that's me yelling at you. I can't really talk to people individually, so I don't know how to do that. I'd have to make a general announcement for everybody. I don't expect to say anything. It should be a silent exam. And so you don't want to leave your mics on. There's no need for that. Nobody's listening to you. We do, however, want to see you. So it's basically a video exam. It will be on Blackboard. So we're in the process of getting that downloaded. I haven't seen the final version yet, and then it'll be put into Blackboard, and we'll have randomized versions for everybody to take. It'll start right on time when your class starts, and you'll have 75 minutes, and it will cut you off right at 75 minutes. So it's designed to be a shorter test. I can't tell you how many questions there are, but we did have several sections, so we do have a lot of choices here. But nobody mentioned how many questions there would be. So it could be as many as 20. If they're multiple choice exam, 75 minutes, I think 20 is certainly not out of alignment. It just depends on how many show your work type questions there are. And that part was out of my hands. I have my own personal opinion on that. From my other class, I can actually choose it. But here, I'm going in line with everybody else. And so the exam will be Wednesday, Thursday of next week. And certainly I have my office hours all day Wednesday, basically 4 hours on Wednesday. So please drop by. Having lots of trouble with the cloud. Apparently I've got hundreds of lectures, most of which are blank. And I just have not found the time to sort through them. I'm sorry about that. Apparently I've had the settings so that the cameras go on really fast and they go off. And so there's a whole bunch of false starts there, and I just haven't found the time to sort through it. I really didn't think I'd have to worry about stuff like that. So now that I know how to do it, from here on in, all live lectures will be cloud recorded, and I'll turn it on manually at the beginning of each lecture. That's how to do it. Nobody had told me that, so, you know, when people don't tell you stuff, you just stumble along and figure it out, I guess. That's a different way of learning than I was brought up with, but hey, that's just the way it goes. Not enough people here to help you out, so I can certainly relate to the difficulties of online teaching and learning because I was a student myself this past summer. So, okay, so after the test, we'll get into Chapter 4, and that'll be coming up later on. It'll be a week from now. We'll have a recorded lecture for the Monday, Tuesday part of next week. But no lecture, no live lecture this week. It'll simply be the exam and be here, you know, a couple minutes early or so. And then, you know, if you don't take the full amount of time, you can certainly leave early. That's not a problem. And I think that's about all I have to say. So I think I'll let you go, and we'll talk to you during the office hour or emails and other ways of contacting me. But it looks dim for the cloud recordings right now. I know several of you want them. I will do my best to get them available later, but for now, it looks unlikely that I'll get to that. Okay, that seems to be all I have for you today. So good luck on the test. Bye-bye.